Well, we just left Neelam Bay State Park and now we're heading up to Washington. Our first stop will be Cannon Beach, where we're going to have a little bite to eat for lunch, and we're going to have a look at Haystack Rock. From there we'll be heading into Astoria, Oregon, and then Washington. Okay, we just got here to Cannon Beach. We're going to have some lunch over here at the Driftwood, which was recommended to us, and they will be open probably in about another 5 minutes or so.
Yep.
It's really a cute little town. The food at the Driftwood was really good. We each had clam chowder and a crab sandwich that was very good. And then we stopped and browsed some of the shops and bought some t-shirts and magnets and a few souvenirs. And the town is gigantic, by the way. You can spend a few days there. The beaches are very nice also. Anyway, this is the famous Haystack Rock, where Goonies was filmed. Our next stop is Astoria, Oregon, and we're here to see the Lewis and Clark National Historic Park, Fort Clatsop. They have a cute little museum here that we're going to browse through, and then we're going to go check out the fort. Well, let me tell you a little bit of history about this expedition. When Captain William Clark wrote these words in his journal on November 7th, 1805, he was not standing at the Pacific Ocean, but the Columbia River estuary. It would be another couple of weeks before he or Captain Meriwether Lewis would stand at what they had been so long anxious to see. By then, they had traveled over 4,000 miles across the North American continent with a contingent of 31 explorers, mostly U.S. Army enlisted men known as the Corps of Discovery. The expedition was President Thomas Jefferson's idea. He had for years been fascinated by the vast and virtually unknown territory west of the Mississippi River. In June 1803, he announced plans to send an exploratory party by rivers to the Pacific. He chose Lewis to head it, and Lewis selected Clark, his friend and former commanding officer, to share the responsibilities. They were to explore the Missouri River to its source, and then establish the most direct water route to the Pacific, making scientific and geographic observations along the way. They were also to learn what they could of Indian tribes they encountered and impress them with the technology and authority of the United States. The explorers started up the Missouri River from near St. Louis on May 14, 1804. After a tedious journey of 5 months, they wintered at Fort Mandan, which they built near the Mandan Indian villages, 1,600 miles up the Missouri. Here they acquired the interpreting services of Toussaint Charbonneau, a French-Canadian trader, and his young Shoshone wife, Sacagawea, accompanied by their son, Juan Batiste. And in 1805, the Corps of Discovery left Fort Mandan and followed the Missouri and its upper branches into an unmapped whirl along the Lemhi River in what is now Idaho. Sacagawea's people provided horses and a guide for the grueling trip over the Continental Divide. And in mid-November 1805, after some 600 miles of water travel down the Clearwater, the Snake and Columbia rivers, the Corps of Discovery finally saw the Pacific Ocean after setting up a temporary station camp on a sandy beach on the north shore of the Columbia. For 10 days, the men explored the surrounding area, including Cape Disappointment, looking for a favorable site for a winter encampment. Finally, on November 24th, an expedition members voted to cross the south side of the Columbia, where game was reported to be plentiful. Lewis and a small party found a most eligible site about 2 miles up the Netou River, now Lewis and Clark River. On December 10, 1805, the men began to build a fort that they named for the local Indian tribe, the Clatsop. By Christmas Day, they were under shelter, It would be their home for the next 3 months. The corpse of Discovery remained at Fort Clatsop from December 7, 1805 until March 23, 1806. During that time, Clatsop and Chinook Indians, whom Clark described as close bargainers, came to the fort almost daily to visit and trade. The captains wrote often in their journals of these tribes' appearance, habits, living conditions, lodges, and abilities as hunters and fishermen. Throughout the winter, Lewis and Clark maintained a strict military routine. A sentinel was constantly posted, and at sundown each day the fort was cleared of visitors and the gates locked for the night. Of the 106 days the explorers spent at the fort, it rained every day but 12, and the men suffered from colds, influenza, rheumatism, and other ailments that the captains treated. Clothing rotted and fleas infested the blankets and hides of the bedding to such a degree that a full night's sleep was almost impossible. With little food in reserve, hunting for meat was all important. The men killed more than 130 elk, 20 deer, and many small animals, including fowl, during the winter. Whale was later added to their diet. For vegetables, the men had to be content with various roots, including the wapato, which resembled a small potato. These root foods were brought by the Indians to the fort for trade. Due to the rain, the men often stayed indoors, engaged in a variety of tasks, from servicing their weapons and preparing elk hide clothing for their homeward journey to making elk fat candles as light for journal writing. The captains brought their journals up to date, making copious notes on the plants, fish, and wildlife around Fort Clatsop, and drew excellent sketches. Many such descriptions were the first scientific identification of important flora and fauna of the American West. Clark, the cartographer of the party, spent most of his time refining and updating maps of the country through which they had traveled. We're up here at the Cape Disappointment Lighthouse. What you're looking at is the North Jetty. And then around this bend here is Cape Disappointment Lighthouse. It's a small lighthouse, but it says we're the world's largest river, was it? World's largest largest river joins the world's largest ocean.
Columbia River.
The Columbia River. Was that the Columbia River, Ron? Okay. We're now here in Washington at Cape Disappointment at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center. And this is actually where Lewis and Clark finished their journey, where they met the Pacific Ocean. So as it reads, welcome to one of America's newest national parks. The park rings the mouth of the Columbia River and stretches some 40 miles along the rugged Pacific coast. The Chinook and Clatsop Indians have made this region their home for thousands of years. More recently, during the winter of 1805 to 1806, Lewis and Clark and the Corps of Discovery visited here at the end of their 4,000-mile trek across the newly acquired Louisiana Territory. Now, with the creation of this new national park, you can walk where the first Chinook and Clatsop, and then Lewis and Clark and the Corps of Discovery walked. Lewis and Clark National Historic Park is a joint venture between the National Park Service and the states of Oregon and Washington. The park consists of 12 individual areas that mark the success of key parts of the Corps of Discovery's mission, arriving safely at the Pacific, maintaining friendly relations with the local Indian tribes, preparing maps and revising journals that recorded their experiences and discoveries, and preparing for the trip home. Taken together, the following sites embody stories of hardship and danger, of collaboration and adaptation, and of exploration and discovery.
This is inside the visitor center of the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center in Washington at Cape Disappointment. This is just one of the rooms. There's quite a few floors in here. They have movies downstairs. Quite an exhibit. It's very impressive.
We're going to be stepping out momentarily, and we're going to view Fort Canby of Washington, which is a coastal fort preserved as part of Cape Disappointment State Park in the U.S. state of Washington. Fort Canby, in defense of the Columbia River. The U.S. Army constructed Fort Canby along with Fort Columbia and Fort Stevens to defend the entrance to the Columbia River from enemy warships. U.S. Army troops manned the forts from the mid-19th century until the end of World War II. The specialized troops trained to respond to all possible threats from enemy warships. To do so, they operated high-powered weaponry that was the world's best and most modern technology of the times.
Fort Canby, Part 2. This is the inside.
Wow, this is long. In case they long.
Yeah.
It's underground.
It's a defense against all threats. And look at these old doors out here. What is that, Ron? Those are bombs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
They kept the cannon projectile.
Part 3. Fort Canby. At Cape Disappointment. Oh, these are those old, wow, those are iron doors.
They probably had the cannons on these.
Oh, yeah. There's some more to it over here. There's some areas closed off up there. Yeah, those look like cannon portholes, huh? Hi, how are you? Part 4. This was a big door right here, too. Yeah, all those are different portals, Ron, to look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think those were, they put the cannons up there and they
I
chained
bet.
them to the wall.
Wow. So there are rooms that went back in there too. It's all overgrown by growth. There's another door open back in there though. I don't know where that goes to.
No, right.
Okay. Interesting. Pretty good sized little fort. Oh, here it is. This is the way to get to the other place. Oh, that's a door that goes down the stairs in there.
You've been road trekking with Row and Low. I hope you enjoyed my segment on a little bit of Cannon Beach, Lewis and Clark Fort Clatsop, Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center, and of course Fort Canby here in Washington. Anyway, we really enjoyed this little trip going back in time with the Lewis and Clark expedition. A little bit of history is always a lot of fun. Anyway, again, I hope you enjoyed it, and if you haven't subscribed, please do. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.